Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. The NBA is back, which means it's time to shoot your shot on Hard Rock Bet. You're home for hoops action all season long. Need a little help with your first bet? Check out the streaks heating up inside the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. You can find live odds to bet on all these streaks right in the Hard Rock Bet app. The Hornets have failed to cover the spread in 10 straight games as home favorites. The Cavs have covered the spread as a road underdog against the Eastern Conference 8 times in a row. The Cavs are also on a 7-game winning streak against the Atlantic Division. The Orlando Magic have covered the spread in 4 straight games as home favorites. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet, there's still plenty of time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. Plus, all week on Hard Rock Bet, you can get an NBA parlay boost for the games. There's new promos every day. You can boost your same-game parlay or your same-game parlay max so your bet pays extra winnings. And on Wednesday, if you're already betting on the Hard Rock Sportsbook app, you know what that means. It's the last day to use your legendary rewards drops. Open up the app today. You could have a bonus bet or who knows what's in there. More drops every Thursday. The rewards and promos are nonstop. Download the Hard Rock Bet app today to make your first deposit. All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great end to your week. The NBA season is off to just a completely ridiculous start, both on and off the court, as we had a crazy gambling scandal today that we'll be touching on briefly at the tail end of the show. But the basketball has been fantastic, and we're covering the 2 nationally televised games from tonight, leading off with that epic showdown between the Nuggets and the Warriors. A ridiculous Steph Curry masterclass as he scores 13 straight points down the stretch in regulation to send it to OT, 16 straight overall, 42 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists. Unbelievable performance from Steph Curry to overcome just a ridiculous shooting performance from Aaron Gordon, as well as a high-powered Denver Nuggets attack. Lots of interesting stuff to get into in that game. After that, the Oklahoma City Thunder have to play really ugly basketball right now due to a bunch of injuries, but they continue to grind out wins with another double overtime win over a scrappy Indiana Pacers team on the road in Indiana. Lots of interesting stuff to get into there. As promised, I wanted to get into one of the other League Pass games from last night's slate, and so we'll be doing a brief segment on the Minnesota Timberwolves leading off their season with a win on the road in Portland against the Trailblazers. And then as mentioned earlier, tail end of the show, we're going to be briefly touching on the gambling scandal that ripped through the NBA today as Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier were both arrested. And reminder, we're doing a mailbag tomorrow morning. So if you want to hit on one of the other games from last night's slate, drop your mailbag questions in the YouTube comments, and in tomorrow's mailbag, we will have an opportunity to circle around to the rest of the league. I've got a bunch of games on my film schedule for tomorrow morning. Would love to see how in the hell Toronto went in and embarrassed Atlanta. I want to see how the Clippers ended up getting embarrassed in Utah. Lots of interesting stuff to get into in tomorrow's show as well. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing great work on our social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Make sure you guys follow us there. And then, as we mentioned before, keep dropping your mailbag questions in the YouTube comments, and we'll get to them throughout the remainder of the season. All right, let's talk some basketball. So one of the things that I've talked about, every single team that we have, especially that's in that second tier, when you're talking about the teams off of that Oklahoma City, Denver tier, and I'd argue that's gotten more complicated. Houston, to me, looks like a team that has a lot of firepower and at least will be making a case to be included in that tier. I was texting with Jackson before the show. Like, to me, Golden State looks closer to that tier than they do to the tier of teams beneath them in the first couple games that we've watched, but we'll obviously keep an eye on that. It's only been 2 games. But one of the things that I talked about for the second tier of teams is there are these like swing factors, right? You need this to go this way and you need this to go that way. And if these things kind of break your way, all of a sudden you got a dead serious team on your hands. And two of the big things that we had our eye on for the Warriors coming into the season was the ability of Jonathan Kuminga to play a winning role for this team. And then we talked about Steph Curry being the guy that's like 28, 29 points per game MVP candidate, Steph Curry, versus 23, 24 points per game. Still offensive engine, Steph Curry, still a guy that's a highly underrated offensive player, but that isn't bringing the scoring in position to the table, right? Like which version of Steph we get both throughout the season and when we get to the postseason is a key swing factor for this team. Jimmy Butler's ability to score the basketball. That was a big one we had our eye on. And like once again tonight in that late first quarter stretch, early second quarter stretch, Jimmy comes out and just starts manufacturing points to carry the offense. Lots of things are breaking towards the things that the Warriors needed in order to accomplish their goals this year. I want to start with Steph though, because again, the big thing that is the defining characteristic of MVP caliber Steph is he's going to get guarded as a shooter no matter what. He still has that reputation, but is he going to also hit enough shots to bolster the team's offense through sheer scoring volume and efficiency? And that was just like an unbelievable display of shot making down the stretch of that game. Like ridiculously difficult movement threes, running to his left, running to his right, beating people off the dribble and finishing in traffic, working his way to the foul line by getting defenders out of position. The two shots that he hit to send it to overtime were ridiculously difficult shots. And again, this is a situation where the defense is extremely keyed in on him. And in order for him to be able to knock down shots off the move, there's a certain amount of strength in his base that he needs. And that's the kind of thing that you worry about for an aging guard, right? That's the thing that you worry about as a player gets older is the tougher shots when you really have to sprint into them, especially in like physical games. Those shots can be really hard to stop your body on a dime and get the lift that you need to unlock his apex talent, which is his shooting ability. And I just think it's an awesome indicator for Steph to start this season that he had this kind of scoring outburst. I was optimistic about it. We talked about it in our previews. One of the reasons why I expected Steph to get off to a great start this year is just I think he's one of the apex competitors of this generation. And I think that he senses the opportunity that's in front of him. Steve Kerr has come out and said it. This is a roster that he thinks makes sense. Steph and Draymond and Jimmy have all come out and said it. They understand that they have an opportunity here. And I think when you get like apex competitor and then there's like this carrot that's hanging on a stick, right? And the carrot is what drives that apex competitor forward. And if the stick is too long and the carrot seems too far off in the distance, it can be hard to get that motor running, right? But when it's closer, when it's there and it feels like you can reach out and grab it, they're going to run like hell to go get it. And this is an example what we're seeing from Steph here early, even above and beyond the statistical production and the shots that he's hitting. You can see it in his body language. There's a level of intensity and just overall like outward visceral competitiveness that we're seeing from him because I think he senses an opportunity here. I think he knows he's got a team that's good enough to potentially win compete for a championship. And I think he's going to do everything in his power that is within his control to help the team accomplish that. Whether or not they're good enough, there's a lot of things that are out of his control there. But you bet your ass Steph Curry, because he's done it for the entirety of his career, is going to maximize what this team can bring to the table. And just an unbelievable opening salvo from him to start this season. I thought that the tone and tenor of the game shifted right around the late second quarter. There was a timeout, some frustration from the Warriors guys, and they were getting their eyes shot out by Aaron Gordon, the rest of that crew. The Nuggets are super high-powered offense. We're going to talk some Nuggets here in a minute. If you're a Nuggets fan, there's a lot to be encouraged by what you saw tonight. The Warriors are a damn good basketball team, and they're hard to beat in Golden State. There's a lot to be excited about. It's an 82-game season. That was a good team that came in and delivered a hell of a punch to Golden State. And they were kind of rattled a little bit in that late second quarter stretch. But from right down the stretch of the second quarter and flowing through the rest of the game, I thought there was a massive uptick in the overall defensive intensity from Golden State. I talk a lot about how to me, leaning on shot variance as an explainer for whether or not shots go in or they don't, to me is a loser mentality. First of all, just based purely on the science of it, I think shot variance is really far down the list of the factors that actually cause makes and misses. It certainly is a factor, but I think it's, especially in the modern NBA with the way the game is covered, I think it can be over-indexed in the way we talk about it. I think we focus on it too much. I'm a big believer that, you got to make them miss. You got to do something that makes them uncomfortable, that rushes them, that disrupts their rhythm. If there's two ways to look at what Aaron Gordon did in that first half, he goes 7 for 7 from three. It was the second most threes made without a miss in a half in NBA history. There's two ways to look at that. You can go, oh shit, Aaron Gordon's making everything. This is ridiculous. When is he going to miss? That's the loser way to look at it. The winner way to look at it is these are open looks. He had made 5 in a row, and Jonathan Kuminga is ducking under a screen as Aaron Gordon rises into his 6th make. You've got to accept personal responsibility for the outcome, especially on the things that you have control of. And right in that stretch there in the late second quarter, I think it started with Draymond and his just physicality on Jokic. He just started really pressuring the hell out of Jokic and kind of beating the hell out of him. And all over the floor in their ball pressure, they did the same thing. And everybody just got a little less comfortable. And that kind of trickled into that third quarter, where the Warriors have been an excellent third quarter team to start the season. Not a big shock. They're known as the third quarter Warriors for a reason. That's been a staple of the Steph Curry era. They come out in that third quarter. They continue that defensive intensity and physicality, and they work their way all the way back into the game. And now they're in a dogfight. And they just kept battling. Again, Aaron Gordon comes in that early fourth quarter stretch, and he gets an and one and hits another 3, and you're like, oh shit, it's 108 to 100, and all of a sudden it looks like Denver's taking control of the game again. And Steph Curry gets a steal, leads to a Will Richard pull-up 3 on the right wing in transition. Will Richard was fantastic in this game. We'll talk about him in a minute. They go right back down. They get another stop. Then Steph has a driving layup on Christian Braun, perfectly defended by Christian Braun, but Steph makes the layup anyway. Just a quick little 5-0 run that gets them right back in the game. Little bits of battling and physicality down the stretch that led to misses. Denver, if you're a Denver fan, you're kicking yourself over 3 missed layups down the stretch of the game. There was a Jokic little left shoulder hook on Al Horford that he missed right at the front of the rim. There was a little inside right-hand finish from Jamal Murray on the left side of the rim that he missed, and then obviously the play right at the end of regulation. But those aren't 100% shots. They are contested rim finishes. Now, are they higher percentage? Jokic is probably going to hit 90% of those little left shoulder hooks that are right at the front of the rim like he did on Horford. Jamal Murray is probably going to hit 60, 65% of that tough inside hand finish. The play at the end of regulation, that's a much tougher one. Draymond, I thought, defended it really well. I thought it was a good no call. But that's a shot Jokic can hit, 55, 60% of the time. As we know, that's been a staple in his career. How do you get them to be the 10% that missed the Horford shot, the 35% that missed the little inside hand layup from Jamal Murray, or the 45% misses of those Jokic little left shoulder hooks? By beating them to the spot, applying the physicality, and making them miss the damn shot. And I just thought that there was a level of that physical intensity that Golden State brought the entirety of the second half and down the stretch in that second quarter that forced Denver into the cold stretches offensively that they had, that forced them into the misses that they had. Again, take control of what you can control. Jackson texted me over the course of the middle of the fourth quarter, and he goes I wonder with how big some of these Western Conference teams are. Obviously, Houston, massive front line, right? Oklahoma City can play Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. They can bring a size element to the table. Dallas, obviously, a massive team. With all these really big teams in the Western Conference, Jackson was well, what about a lineup where you essentially just play Steph with all of the big dudes, with Jimmy, Jonathan Kuminga, Al Horford, and Draymond Green? And I shit you not, right after he texted me that, they put him in the game and they wrote him out the rest of the night. And what's interesting is is that going to be what they do every single game? No, it's going to depend on the matchup. Denver is very much a bigger and slower team. So I think it's a appropriate way to match up in that situation. There will be situations where it makes absolutely no sense at all to use that lineup. But one of the things I talk about on the show all the time is like winning an NBA championship is not about being the best offensive rating team or the best defensive rating team or the best net rating team or the best clutch team or whatever it might be. It's literally about, are you capable of beating 4 completely different types of teams 4 times out of 7 over the course of 2 months? It's a versatility game. And the Warriors have a punch now that they have never had in my time watching the team, where they have the ability to size up while maintaining the spacing and movement that they need to succeed. They were scoring with that group. Al Horford hitting that corner 3 out of the right corner when Jokic was roaming. And again, like, this was in early overtime. And if you guys remember, right at the start of overtime, Steph beat Christian Brown off of a little off-ball action to the top of the key, turned over his right shoulder and hit like a 25-footer. And on that play, the Nuggets didn't have anybody showing at the level. And so one of the things that Jokic is trying to do there is he's going, Christian Brown's in a lock and trail, and there's an easy opportunity for guys to get open on slips when people are showing up at the level. Jokic is like, I got to roam. I've got to be around, trying to troll around the paint and potentially show at the level on a screen if Steph comes off looking to shoot. He's essentially trying to counter Steph's movement by roaming off of Al Horford. And in the past, when that was Kevon Looney, that was a guy that you could roam off of in that situation. And Al Horford burns him with the right corner 3, and Jokic threw a decent contest at the end, but Horford burns him, and like the broadcast is calling out that Steve Kerr's smiling. You know why he's smiling? That's a flexibility he hasn't had in years past. The ability to space the floor while also sizing up. And I think it just, there were a couple other things defensively in that stretch. They did a really good job of essentially taking away any of the mismatch opportunities that Denver could attack. This was something we saw in the Nuggets game, or excuse me, the Lakers game on Tuesday night, if you guys remember. But Joe Verre, by the way, if you guys follow him on Twitter, I highly recommend if you haven't. He just does like little like video explainers of some of the actions that Golden State runs. Just does a really good job covering the team. But he put together a little video explainer talking about the hedge and recover sequences and the scram switching that Golden State was using to protect Steph from Luka. And it started with Luka hitting a little right shoulder fade off of Steph in the middle of the floor, attacking him once. And then they basically were unable to attack that matchup the rest of the way. And then obviously tonight, down the stretch of the game, they had their handful of plays where they were able to go at Steph throughout the regulation. But in crunch time, they were able to essentially stash Steph on the back line and scram switch. Anytime they brought Steph's man up the screen, they just put someone else, Jonathan Kuminga, Jimmy Butler, Al Horford, Draymond Green. It was just like the 2-man game for Murray and Jokic with a steady diet of big, athletic, versatile defenders that they had to take their pick of attacking. And so it was a lot of like tougher shots. Like Jonathan Kuminga, he's been a revelation to start this year, but he had so many like little defensive plays that I thought played a big role. He had a play where he was guarding Aaron Gordon on the left block, and like, this is red hot, damn near dropped 50 Aaron Gordon. And he pressured him and bumped him so good on the little right shoulder fade that Aaron Gordon like hit the corner of the backboard on a fadeaway. I need to see the replay to see if it was actually a block or a foul, but he had a really nice rotation to Jokic in overtime where he hit him, like kind of beat him to the spot, applied physicality on his base, and it looked like he might have blocked Jokic up top on like a little hook shot. Jonathan Kuminga was phenomenal defensively down the stretch of this game. And what it does, like, when he's making the right decisions on offense, and again, like, I thought he made all the right reads on offense. There was a play early in overtime where he kind of took it upon himself to drive to the rim, but he had space. I didn't think it was a bad take, and he just smoked an easy layup, and he smoked a putback. I didn't think that was a bad play. He made good decisions and made enough plays on offense to get Steve Kerr to trust him to stay on the floor, which unlocked this group of 4 super versatile dudes that were just all communicating and scramming each other out of switches and rotating. And like, there were a handful of mistakes. Like Draymond Green lost Aaron Gordon on a little pin screen from Jamal Murray at the elbow that where Aaron Gordon hit a three late in regulation. There were a handful of mistakes and some tough shot making from some really good players for Denver. But for the most part, that unit was able to make Denver pretty uncomfortable. And so I just think it's a testament to the versatility that this particular Warriors roster has compared to previous iterations of the team. Again, a couple other quick shout outs. Jonathan Kuminga, it's only been 2 games. Sure. One of the things I talked about in last night's show, if you guys remember, the thing with the Warriors is they face 2 bigger, slower teams to start the season. I am really curious to see what they look like offensively against more of a quicker, more athletic perimeter-based team. So there's going to be different matchups that I think will challenge them in different ways. But the 2 first tests, you have a middle-tier Western Conference team on the road, and then you have a team that I consider to be the championship favorite at this point in Denver, and you win them both, and you show very impressive things on both ends of the floor in both games. And in each game, Jonathan Kuminga was able to play a dead serious winning role. He was unbelievable in the second half against the Lakers. Throughout this game, but especially in the second half defensively, Jonathan Kuminga was unbelievable in this game. And so, all the talk about what the Warriors need, they need potentially a wing that can be athletic and make plays and function in their offense, or they need a scoring guard or whatever it is. They don't need any of that shit if this is the Jonathan Kuminga they're going to get. And so again, it's only 2 games, but I just think it's a wonderful start for him on that front. Will Richard, there was a moment there where I thought he might close the game because of how late he was playing into the fourth quarter. And the couple of things that stood out to me, first of all, he's a big functional athlete that can do a bunch of things all over the floor just with his size and his ability to jump. So competing for big defensive rebounds, he's running up and down the floor in transition. But it's the high IQ piece. He was making high quality reads in the short roll for out of ball screens where he's catching in the middle and looking, reading the defender stepping up on him and dropping it off to the cutter along the baseline. He, as a baseline cutter, has a really nice natural feel for when to time his cuts along the baseline. And then he just finds himself open and ends up getting easy opportunities right under the rim. Again, that transition 3 he hit when it was 108 to 100, I thought was one of the biggest shots in the game. Denver was this close to ending that thing right there. Steph forces a turnover, Will hits that shot, and it kind of changed the tone and tenor of the game. I just, Golden State just keeps finding these types of guys. And Will Richard just looks like the next in a long line of just discount margin basketball players that somehow step in and play winning basketball in a dead serious role for the Warriors, which I think is just a testament to their organizational excellence from the top down. And then lastly, before we move on to Denver, just if Steph is going to look like that, we need to recalibrate whether or not the Warriors are a first or second tier contender, because if Steph is going to rise the level of his play to that of the top tier superstars in this league, they just suddenly present a lot of the similar two-way excellence and versatility that we consider when we talk about Denver and Oklahoma City. So just really, really encouraging 2-0 start for Golden State. Warriors fans certainly have a lot to be excited about. On the Denver front, you lost a road game against a very good NBA team, but I generally was very impressed by Denver tonight. The offense looks utterly ridiculous. The additions of Cam Johnson and Jonas Valanciunas and Tim Hardaway Jr. and Bruce Brown, they just have so many guys who can make plays within their offense. And then I would argue that Jokic, Murray, and Gordon as a trio, this is as good as they've ever looked. This is the best shape that Jamal Murray's been in at this phase in the season that I can remember. This is the most athletic and polished Jamal Murray's looked like in October. Aaron Gordon, this thing with the shooting, this has been the story for well over a year now. Every time I see a player that puts up statistical excellence over some sort of sample size that is different than what we saw before, I start to look at process. So, for instance, for a ball handler, take it when I saw the numbers that Denny Avdia was putting up at the tail end of last season. what encouraged me was not so much that he put up the numbers, it was the way that he was doing it, the methodical way that he was able to consistently get into the paint with slashing drives and using his body to put the defender in jail and kind of methodically work the middle of the floor and bait rim protectors into awkward positions so he can drop off passes or sneak by them for layups. I'm like, this works. That's not like he just put up numbers. Like, this works. He's going to be a good player for a long time. Similarly, when I look at jump shooting, I look at form. And like I noticed last year with Aaron Gordon, it was like super fluid. There was no wasted motion. He had a really strong base, excellent power transfer all the way up through his shot. Speaking of power transfer, we're going to talk about it with Denny Avdia later. Like Denny missed every single jump shot short off the front of the rim, in large part because he has a little hitch in the middle of his shot, so he's losing power on the way up. Aaron Gordon doesn't have that. It's fluid, it's smooth, it's easy from the bottom all the way through to the top. And then replication, right? Every release needs to look the same. And like Aaron Gordon is just a good shooter now. He's just a really, really good shooter now. And when you can do it at 6'10", in a lineup where you're already having to account for other perimeter players, he's going to get matchups where he's going to get open. And it's just his ability to shoot the basketball combined with, we saw a dominant post player tonight. And he flashed a little bit of this in the past. We saw it obviously in game 1 in a big way of the NBA Finals in 2023 when he was punishing the Miami Heat down there. But he's become like a really high level polished post player. He's got tough shot making ability over both of his shoulders. He can hit left shoulder fades and right shoulder fades. He can hit hooks. He's good at getting inside position and bullying his way for fouls and easy layups right underneath the basket. Aaron Gordon is just an awesome basketball player now. So you have like the best version of the big three that you've ever had, and you've got the like incredible depth of offensive skill and finishing talent around him. It's just a super exciting time to be a Denver Nuggets fan. That's a high-powered offense right there. Now, there's several specific things that I want to dive into. First of all, you're a +4 with Jokic off the floor. That's a really good sign. I talked about this with Adam Mares on I'm doing once a week with Adam Mares on the All NBA podcast, filling in for Tim Legler. He's got a much busier calendar this year, so he's only going twice a week with Mares. So I'm stepping in for him mostly on Fridays, but we went on Monday this week. And one of the things that Adam asked me was like, do you think that the Nuggets will be 15 points better per 100 possessions with Jokic on versus off, over under? And I said under, and it wasn't because I didn't think the Nuggets would be great with Jokic on the floor. They were +11.5 last year with Jokic on the floor, and I told Adam I expect that to get up to like 13 or so, 13 maybe 14. But one of the things that that led me to take the under there is I actually think that this Nuggets team is going to be slightly positive this season with Jokic off the floor, which is a dynamic they haven't had in years past. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that they have Jonas Valanciunas as a guy that allows them to have that scheme consistency, that can set better screens, that can bring kind of like a physical imposition to that lineup that they didn't have before. And there's just more talent, which allows them to stagger more of their higher quality players into those bench groups. Simple way to put it is just there's better basketball players on the floor right now when Jokic is off the floor than there was last year. And so +4 with Jokic off the floor, again, on the road against a very, very good Golden State team. Strong indicator on that front. Couple of notes, though. I did think that they were still a little too Jamal Murray reliant in those bench groups. This is not to say that you can't, to say that I'm going overly negative. Of course, they were positive with Jokic off the floor, but it's more just in terms of sustainability in the long run. I did think it was a little too much Jamal dribbling still with that bench group. I'd like to see a little bit more ball and player movement and keeping people involved. And specifically because I think they need to find a way to keep Cam Johnson in a better rhythm. Cam missed some good looks today. I thought in the early part of the game, both Cam and Tim Hardaway both missed some good looks for them. The shots that I know that they'll make at a higher clip as the season progresses. But then there was also a 3 in overtime that Cam Johnson took off of the right wing that was open, but he left it way short. And I think a big part of why it was way short was he was not very involved down the stretch of the game. And so I think that they can make a little bit more of an effort to invest in rhythm for Cam Johnson throughout the game. And one of the ways to do that is in those bench groups, give him more opportunity to be aggressive with the basketball. Also, even when Jokic is on the floor, more action that directly involves Cam Johnson just to get him to touch the ball a little bit more. I think that, when Michael Porter Jr. was there, there was a little bit more of him just being directly involved in the action rather than just kind of spotting up on the weak side the way that Cam Johnson did. But one of the upsides you saw, though, Cam Johnson provided a really steady defensive presence for them late in the game. There wasn't like a easy way for them to attack the way that it used to be when Michael Porter Jr. was out there. So again, you lost that game. If you're a Nuggets fan, you're pointing to those three. Like if Jokic hits that easy little left shoulder hook over Al Horford. Now, by the way, I think it's a dangerous game to play that. Steph Curry also smoked a wide open reverse layup in that stretch, but there were three pretty high percentage looks, one for Murray and two for Jokic down the stretch that didn't go in. It's a make or miss league. Golden State's awesome. You lost a game on the road, but generally I left that game super impressed by both teams. And I think if you're a Nuggets fan, a lot of like proof of concept in some of the stuff that we talked about this offseason. All right, let's move on to the earlier game in the ESPN slate, the Thunder versus the Indiana Pacers. Another masterclass from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Again, with the loss of J-Dub and also Kasem Wallace, who was out in this game, they're just super light on ball handling and refined offensive skill. And that just puts a massive burden on Shai to create shots. And I just thought he did a wonderful job of it again. It started with a similar concept to what we saw in the NBA Finals, which was Oklahoma City confronting the ball pressure from Indiana by setting screens out closer to half court. And if you guys remember in the finals, Miles Turner was often just getting toasted when he would try to come out to the perimeter to catch Shai coming off of those screens. And then Shai would just snake the dribble or just drive right around him and get all the way to the rim. We saw a lot of that similar dynamic taking place in the early part of the game tonight. Ball pressure, screens out close to half court, Shai just getting downhill and just getting a ton of layups and fouls. And by the way, Shai attempted 26 free throws tonight. He's averaging 20 foul shot attempts through the first two games. It's just ridiculous. But after that, the Pacers kind of tweaked it and stopped pressuring so much. And they also started to see that little brush screen near half court coming. And they would scoop like way around it and meet Shai on the other side. So they were able to kind of contain some of those semi-transition drives. And so when they did that, it turned into a steady diet of Shai ISOs. And it was like ISOs off the right elbow and post-ups on the left block. A lot of post-ups on the left block in the second half. And from there, they just continued to slowly but surely manufacture offense. Like Shai would score one-on-one with little short jump shots. He used a bunch of really sharp pump fakes to draw fouls tonight. Like he sets up his pump fake extremely well to look like his regular shot attempt. And the ones that I think of are like he drew one, I think it was on Jarris Walker. He got one on Jarris Walker, one on Obi Toppin late that kind of matched this concept that I'm talking about. But off the right elbow, one of those right elbow ISOs, he went with that like textbook little live dribble jab step where he kind of like leads with his right foot and kind of jabs with it while he does a quick little in and out dribble. He'll take that shot all the time. And it looks exactly like that. And so it's tantalizing when you're the defender, when he goes like that and then he goes up into his shot and it looks exactly the way it looks like when he's actually shooting. And you want to time it right to get a contest. But next thing you know, Shai's still on the ground. Now he's jumping into you and draws a foul. Similarly, the right shoulder fade, he got one of these off of the left block in overtime, if I remember correctly. But he'll bump you with that left shoulder, he'll spin over that right shoulder, and he'll take that shot. And so when he bumps you with that left shoulder and then spins and then just shows the ball, it's tantalizing. You want to try to time it. You end up jumping. Next thing you know, he's jumping into your chest and he's drawing a foul. It's just like, it's a textbook example of like the fundamentals. Like there's I think back to all the best pump fakes that I've seen in my time covering the league and like, or being a fan of the league. And like, I remember Chris Bosh used to get people with this pump fake all the time. Why? Because if you freeze framed it right at the top of the shot, the pump fake and the shot looked exactly the same. And so it was just so difficult for players to figure out what he was doing when he would show them the ball like that. The other thing that I thought Mark Dagenal did a really nice job of in this game was setting up the spacing. He always kept AJ Mitchell or Aaron Wiggins one pass away on those ISOs and post-ups. And so the Pacers were mostly sending their doubles from that direction. And I thought both of those guys did a really nice job of taking advantage of the baked-in driving lanes that were there by just ripping off of that closeout and getting all the way into the lane. AJ Mitchell got a bunch of those. Aaron Wiggins got one of those. And then also Aaron Wiggins was able to knock down the jump shots, the open jump shots that were coming off of those double teams. He hit several down the stretch to ice the game. what it did is it just put Indiana in this brutal spot where they either had to let one of those guys, like with a huge disadvantage, try to guard Shea, or they had to send the double team. And next thing you know, it's AJ Mitchell ripping down the lane for a layup or drawing a foul, or Aaron Wiggins knocking down an open jump shot. And it just is a testament to the depth of talent that this Oklahoma City team has. Like AJ Mitchell and Aaron Wiggins went for 49 points, being slotted way up into tougher on-ball roles because of the injuries. Like Wiggins hit like a tough, like step back three at the top of the key. AJ Mitchell had a lot of good on-ball reps. He was doing a really nice job getting to his strong hand, getting all the way to the rim and drawing fouls and getting easy layups. Those two guys just did enough to support Shea. And then, like, Shea's just been absolutely fantastic to start the year. There's no way around it. And the crazy thing is I feel like he still left some meat on the bone in those two games. Like, he missed several easy ones at the end of regulation tonight, little short jumpers around the left elbow that he missed that are shots that he normally makes. And he missed like 5 clutch free throws in the 2 games. Despite all that, he's averaging 45 points in 2 wins, and his team literally needed every single one of those points with the injuries that they've had. I just can't say enough about how good Shea has been to start the season. And then Lou Dort, once again, I mean, I know he's, 1 for 12 or something like that to start the season from 3. He's having a rough shooting start, but he's still just such a wrecking ball on defense. I felt bad for Pascal Siakam tonight because the Pacers dropped Nembhard early in the game. He gets tangled up with Shea, hurts his shoulder. Nesmith ends up going down in the middle of the game. They're already out Tyrese Halliburton and TJ McConnell. So there's just no ball handling. And so, like, in overtime, you were watching Siakam bring the ball up over and over again against like aggressive Lou Dort full court pressure. And it just looked like a miserable experience. Like, even Siakam was handling it. Like, he wasn't turning it over. He was just kind of spinning over both shoulders and just kept spinning over both shoulders. And he was protecting the ball. But like, Lou Dort was so far up underneath him with physicality, you could literally see Siakam getting like dislodged over and over again just because of how strong Dort is. And like, again, I like, Siakam's effort was admirable, and he hit a bunch of shots, and we'll talk about him more in a minute. But he also missed several jump shots late. And I do think that that pressure from Dort played a role in wearing him down, just like it did with KD on opening night. Only real negative note I have on the OKC front, disappointing night for Chet on offense. He was 0 for 6 from 3. And one of the things that I'm consistently seeing with Chet is they're situating him on the opposite wing. And look, there's a lot of value there if you can do that. Boston did this for years in the Porzingis Horford era, for the 2 years, I should say. I say years, but for those 2 years, they were positioning Horford and Porzingis above the break for a very specific reason. If you do that, it potentially removes a rim protector from the paint because the rotation is different coming off the wing than it is coming out of the corner, right? But you have to be able to hit the shot. And one of the things that's happening with Chet is they're situating him there, and especially in the 2 big looks with Hartenstein, right? And when they situate him there, his man is consistently digging down and nail help, right? So he's sitting right down at the nail, right at the foul line, ready to help on any Shea drive or any other action taking place on the other side of the court. And the only thing that Chet can do to loosen that up is to hit that above the break 3. And, you know, he's hit a couple on opening night. He hit a big one in crunch time on opening night, but that was part of the story tonight. Was he was 0 for 6 from 3, and it allowed Indiana to get away with sending aggressive help to the nail when he was situating himself there. And so just something to keep an eye on with Chet, just whether or not he can get to the point where he can consistently knock that shot down over time. But again, like, can't complain about 2-0 against 2 good teams to start your title defense. And the Thunder just look like a grown-up team led by Shea. A really transformed looking group playing some excellent basketball right now. On the Pacers front, honestly, just a super respectable battle from them, from a team that is completely devastated by injuries. The injuries forced a bunch of their bench guys to step up into bigger roles, and guys just made plays. Like Jarris Walker hit a couple of really tough mid-range jump shots in overtime. Obi Toppin was his typical transition self, getting easy ones at the rim. He also had a deep seal in overtime where he got a post touch for an easy layup. Ben Shepherd hit some shots. And then like both Siakam and Mathurin were brilliant. Again, Siakam handled ball pressure well and just kept getting to his spots for those little short mid-range pull-up jump shots, and he hit, I think, 3 threes in the game as well. He had 32 and 15. Ben Mathurin, what a night for him. 36 points and 11 rebounds. We talked about this a lot with Ben Mathurin in the finals, if you guys remember. But when you're playing against Oklahoma City, like having a big, strong athletes is vital because those are the guys that can get to their spots against the physicality. And he was consistently getting downhill and like breaking the point of attack for Oklahoma City, screaming downhill and drawing a lot of fouls by just throwing his body into traffic where Oklahoma City was so out of position they were hacking him and he was working his way to the line a ton. He countered that with a bunch of over-the-top jump shots, especially some tough ones off the dribble. And like, obviously they're going to need him a ton to start the season with the injuries that they're dealing with, but he was awesome tonight. And he looked awesome at a couple of specific stretches against Oklahoma City in the finals. And I think he's just a useful weapon to have against those physical perimeter defense oriented teams. I'm just generally super impressed by Indiana. I was texting about this with Jackson during the game. Like, it wasn't so much the case after Neesmith and Nembhard went down because they just had so little ball handling that their movement wasn't quite as good. But I actually think that the Pacers play the best basketball in the NBA. I thought Tim Legler did an excellent job of breaking down this concept in the broadcast in the first half, but they just relentlessly put pressure on your defense by constantly hitting gaps through ball and player movement, cutting, slashing, transition kick-aheads. They're constantly hitting gaps. And so it just capitalizes on every little bit of efficiency that exists in the game. And, you know, because of that, they never get stuck in the half court. They never get stagnant. Like whoever has the ball will immediately do one of two things. They'll throw a swing pass and cut or screen away, like immediately. Or they'll drive, even if it's not like a drive to beat the guy off the dribble, like they'll just rip through and drive. Why? Because if you do that, there's probably going to be a defender who just takes an extra step in somewhere on the floor. There's going to be some sort of defensive reaction. Then you pitch the ball to that guy. Now he has a better chance because the defender's closing out on him. We've talked about this concept a lot, but your chances of scoring dramatically improved the further the defender is away from you. I know, big shock, right? But you have to create those advantages by hitting gaps. And when you hit gaps, the defense reacts. When the defense reacts, you create openings to throw for a closeout. And I thought Richard Jefferson did a nice job pointing this out in the first half as well. The more drives, the more cuts, the more screens, the more interchanges you have on every possession, the more opportunities it is for somebody to make a mistake on defense. And when they make a mistake, that leaves somebody wide open. That's how they get so many quality three-point shots and attempts at the rim. It's why I believe the Pacers play the best basketball in the NBA, irrespective of talent. They capitalize on every single process controllable that is available in the game of basketball. On defense, they apply ball pressure so they can wear you down and fatigue you. That also makes opposing ball handlers uncomfortable. It's like a little margin that they capitalize on. And then on offense, they push in transition to get every extra transition possession because transition possessions are worth more than half-court possessions on a point-per-possession basis. And then in the half-court, they move, cut, screen, drive, move, cut, screen, drive more than any other team in the NBA, which creates all sorts of easy opportunities for their players to capitalize on. So like when I think of just basketball as an art form in a vacuum, irrespective of the talent of the players that are playing, I don't think there's any team playing better basketball than the Indiana Pacers. And so I just want to shout out Rick Carlisle and the culture that he and Kevin Pritchard have built there in Indiana over the last few years. All right, Trailblazers, Blazers. Trailblazers. Timberwolves, Blazers. Excuse me. We're going to hit this game, and then we're going to briefly touch on the gambling scandal, and then we'll get out of here tonight. Super close back and forth game. No team ever led by more than 8. The Blazers controlled most of the game. They led from the late first quarter all the way through to the late fourth quarter. But then the Wolves came back and stole it late with 4 big jump shots, 3 of which came from Anthony Edwards. He had 2 big pull-up threes. There was a play where Rudy Gobert just absolutely wiped out Tumani Kamara on a screen along the right side. And when Ant came off that screen, Donovan Clingan was way back in like a drop coverage. So Ant got a really clean look and then he hit it. And then he hit one in a late clock ISO against Jeremy Grant where he just kind of dribbled into his chest with his right shoulder. Jeremy Grant tried to flop. Jeremy Grant flopped twice and hurt his team down the stretch. We'll talk about that in a minute. But he drives into Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant flops, and Ant hits another pull-up 3 at the top of the key. The second flop from Jeremy Grant was on a like 1 or 2 possessions prior. Julius Randle's posting him up, and he just flops on a little basic bump. Both of them were just, there's no chance he was getting an offensive foul call. They were just bad flops. And when he flopped, Jaden McDaniels' man had to step over to help on Julius Randle. Julius pitched it back to Jaden in the left corner. Jaden hits that huge three out of the left corner, and then Ant ends up icing the game with a nasty step back mid-range jump shot along the left side against Toumani Camara. Classic example of the concept we've talked about when it comes to late game shot making. It's a 2-point game. It's going to be a 2-possession game no matter what if you get a bucket. You don't necessarily need a 3. You're looking for the highest field goal percentage shot. They're packing the paint. Going for a 17, 18-footer is a substantially higher percentage shot on a single shot, pure field goal percentage basis than a 3-point shot, even if the 3-point shot gets you the extra point. And that's why I wanted to see Ant build that out in his game. And it just was a really, really nice game from Ant. He was 5 for 10 from 3. Really good balance, though. He was 9 for 18 from 2. He was 5 for 8 on mid-range jump shots. He had 4 of them in the second half, including some really tough ones. A little turnaround fadeaway right around the foul line. He hit like a rescue late clock step back 3 or step back jump shot in the left corners on this weird play where I think Julius Randle lost his shoe. And he like took a nasty step back over Toumani Camara. Just like tough bits of shot making that helped manufacture extra points for him. And again, like that's the thing to keep an eye on with him. Like he wants to catch up to Shea, but Shea hits that shot on over 50% on volume. And Ant did so for one game. So let's see how well he can sustain it. And like he only had 1 assist, but I actually thought he had some nice playmaking sequences that Minnesota just didn't pay off. Really nice season debut for Ant, man. He starts the year off with a 40-piece. Julius Randle, 19 and 6. Usual playmaking out of his high post ISOs, including one of the biggest plays of the game on that little kickback to Jaden McDaniels. He just provides some like basic advantage creation for them. Solid game from him. What a game from Jaden McDaniels, though. Who looked great in camp, looked great in the postseason last year. 3 for 4 from 3, continuing that hot shooting stretch. Again, he was 38% from 3 in the playoffs, 2 for 5 in preseason, now 3 for 4 in his first game, including a clutch one out of the left corner. His improved offensive polish is a huge influx of talent for this team. He had a huge defensive play late on a drive from Denny Avdia where he poked the ball away from him and got a steal that led to a fast break going the other way. And then some really interesting young games from the young guys, from Jalen Clark and from Terrence Shannon. You got to see the upsides and the downsides of Jalen Clark. Like you got to see his excellent point of attack defense. He had a couple of big steals to start the fourth quarter for a bench group for the Wolves, but you also saw what a lot of teams are going to do against him. So the Blazers just for a big stretch of that game just put Donovan Clingan on him and had Donovan just kind of sit back into the paint, and Jalen was unable to make him pay by hitting threes. And so it ended up badly hurting Minnesota's spacing. So like that's just something to keep an eye on with Jalen Clark. The NBA starts to figure out your weaknesses pretty quickly. If they're going to stash centers on him, he's going to have to find a way to make him pay. Otherwise, no one's going to care about how good his point of attack defense is if he's butchering the spacing on the other end of the floor. Just something to keep an eye on. And then Terrence Shannon had a really nice game. This was something that started to show in the playoffs a bit. He ended up getting some shifts there. And then I also noticed this in preseason, but he's very good at generating dribble penetration and then making quality kick-out passes in the middle of the floor. He had a massive drive late in the game off of some ball pressure, way out extended close to half court on the left side. Toasts his man off the dribble, gets into the lane, and ends up kind of smoking an up and under right-hand layup. But in the process, he pressured the rim so hard that he engaged Donovan Clingan to come over and try to block his shot. And that just left this wide open space for Rudy Gobert to come in and dunk in the miss, and he missed it perfectly right off the backboard. And in came Rudy for the big time dunk. But like he was slashing into the paint and generating opportunities over and over again in that game. He also hit both of his threes. And I thought it was interesting because like Dante DiVincenzo had a really rough night, just kept turning the ball over, just kind of came out sloppy. But I thought it was a really interesting sign that Chris Finch trusted him to close the game, Terrence Shannon, to close the game. We've talked about how the Wolves really need one of those two guys, Jalen Clark or Terrence Shannon, to pop this year. And that was a really nice start for Terrence Shannon. He just demonstrated that he's at least going to make an effort to become that guy that can fill the Nickeil Alexander-Walker role. It's going to be a very different kind of player, but as long as he can come in and play a couple of shifts per game in the postseason, it should maintain the depth that this Timberwolves team has been famous for. Lots of stuff to clean up for Minnesota. Too many turnovers, too many fouls, but a legit road win against a solid team to start the year. On the Portland front, it was weird. It was kind of like a disappointing game in a lot of ways. Like They were in it because Jeremy Grant went for 29 and because Minnesota committed way too many fouls. I will credit Portland. They generated a ton of rim pressure. Denny Avdia in particular was knifing into the teeth of their defense over and over again. They were able to draw a lot of fouls. But like there was a couple of specific things that stood out to me. Like Shaedon, he took about a half dozen shots that I thought were poor shot selection. And I think if he refines that a little bit, like there's a lot of things that I like about Shaedon Sharpe, but right now he's just a little too, his like shot pass decisions are just a little too aggressive. And I think sometimes he can hurt his own rhythm with the types of difficult shots that he can take. Denny, and I noticed this in preseason, but it's something that really stood out in like kind of a significant way in game one. But he's missing all of his 3-point shots short, like badly short. And this was something that happened in preseason, but he missed like 6 or 7 jump shots short off the front of the rim. And there's so many things I like about Denny's game. Like he's good at setting up his man for screens and good at using his size and strength to find leverage angles for him to get dribble penetration. He's methodical and patient on his drives. He makes really good reads in the middle of the floor. He's got short range shot making. He demonstrated a lot of that last night, like little push shots and floaters in the lane. But he's got to counter it by being able to hit these threes. And there's just a little bit of like a hitch in the middle of his shot. And what ends up happening is like you lose power. Again, like if you have power transfer, good energy transfer through your shot, then what happens is the top of the shot is the easiest, breeziest flip of the wrist ever, right? But if you lose energy somewhere along the way, whether it be something hitchy in your back or in your hips or in your elbows, like when you're in your pocket, when you're bringing the ball up, you lose that power. And all of a sudden it forces a lot more at the top of the shot. And that's where you end up having short misses because your release isn't generating enough power. And so like just something to keep an eye on. I think that's like the next step for Denny is just generating a little bit more fluidity in his pull-up jump shooting. I am a big believer in him as like that kind of classic big scoring playmaking forward though. I hated the offensive game from Drew Holiday. I think I might have hated almost every shot he took. He had a couple of really bad forces in crunch time. He took like a transition pull-up 3 when he was like, I think he was 1 for 6 from 3 at the time when he took the shot. And he just like stopped and popped in transition, in traffic. And like he almost made it, but like it was just like a really aggressive and tough shot to take in that specific spot. He forced a couple shots close to the rim late in the game as well. I think that he's overdoing it a little bit on offense. So I'd like to see him tone it back a bit. Really nice night for Jeremy Grant, though. Again, 29, was getting to the basket, was also hitting his catch and shoot 3 on the move and off the catch. Just had a couple of flops late that ended up burning him. But as a team, again, like I think they're capable of playing a lot better. And yet they still were in good position to potentially steal that game from Minnesota. That was a fun and scrappy Blazers team that we watched last night. And I think their fans are going to enjoy watching them play this year. Really briefly on this gambling scandal before we get out of here tonight. So Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups are the 2 big NBA names implicated. But apparently there were over 30 arrests and the Italian mob was involved. It's a total shit show for sure, right? And here's all I'm going to say. I see a lot of people who get preachy about legalized sports gambling. You're not going to hear that from me. To me, sports gambling is like alcohol. Yeah, there are very dark cases where it can ruin lives, and it certainly is not a perfect industry. But the vast majority of people use it responsibly. And I think as an American freedom, it's kind of cool that we're allowed to do it. And there were gambling scandals in professional sports long before it became legalized, as recently as the Tim Donaghy scandal, right? However, I do think it's super important when stuff like this happens that it's taken very seriously and that the people involved are severely punished. It's not just about integrity within gambling. It's about the integrity of these leagues. It's such a fickle thing when it gets rattled. Like the NBA is still dealing with conspiracy theories that followed the Tim Donaghy story. Still to this day, people think free throws are like a gift from the league rather than something that is earned via basketball. And like these guys are now tied to the Italian mob. Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier are now directly tied to the Italian mob. That's a stigma that really can never be dropped. It makes it really hard for me to imagine either of Rozier or Billups ever being associated with the NBA again. I know that sounds severe, but those are the lengths that the league needs to go to in order to salvage its integrity. when this kind of stuff happens. Similarly with, I made the alcohol comparison earlier, like drink all you want, but you get caught drinking and driving, the penalty is very severe. Why? That shit can get somebody killed. It's not a game. As a society, we don't mess around with that. Last thing I'll say about it is this. I do think that this is a new kind of industry to legalize sports betting, and it's something that needs to continue to be refined. And I tend to agree with Adam Silver that they need to make some tweaks to the types of bets that are allowed. Like betting over-unders on role players is ridiculous. There's too much potential for weirdness there because they don't make as much money as the stars do. And how common it is for role players to experience wild fluctuations in minutes and production because of things that happen night to night. So, like, in summation, this is, again, I didn't want to go long on this. I don't really have too much to say, but like, I'm not clutching my pearls today about the state of legalized sports gambling. But obviously, pending the results of the legal process and how much evidence they can provide, if these guys are proven guilty, they need to be severely punished for the sake of the integrity of the league. Because at the end of the day, the integrity of the league is all that matters when it comes to the health of these leagues in the future. So definitely bad news ripping through the NBA. We don't know everything. Obviously, the denials came out. I was joking with Jackson earlier. Like, part of becoming an adult is realizing that every public figure just deny. It's just what you see. It's just kind of the way things work, right? And so a lot of stuff still needs to get sorted out. The Damon Jones thing was really weird. I saw a bunch of LeBron detractors were having some fun with it. My thing is, like, there's no way LeBron's that stupid. Also, if Kash Patel had anything on LeBron, you bet your ass he would have put it out there because it for obvious reasons we don't have to get into. So again, like, I don't know too much else to make of it. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to get all worked up and clutch my pearls over legalized sports betting. It's just, it's the way it is. It's the way it's going to be. And we just need to continue to make the tweaks to get the bad actors out of it whenever we can and kind of refine it, right? All right, guys, that's all we have for tonight. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. That was a hell of a run there. 3 straight live shows to start the week. We have our mailbag tomorrow. Again, drop your questions in the YouTube comments. After the mailbag, we'll be taking the weekend off, but then we'll be back Monday for our usual routine, and we'll see you guys then.